So for the past week, I've watched a bunch of Suzume videos, and because I really like the show, I was, hoping to watch some reviews that kind of agreed with me. But all of these reviews and criticisms that I've watched, none of them seem to really paint the full story because all of them really seem to glamorize the show as one of the greatest arts of work to ever come out. And yes, it is really, really good. So before you type your hate comments, I do like this show a lot. But there are huge flaws with this show, and it feels like nobody is pointing out because every show has flaws, and this one has a bunch of them. So, if you were looking for a review that kind of like dick sucks this whole show, then yeah, go ahead, watch another video. But this video, I'm gonna be pointing out some obvious flaws. So I will be going over pros and cons because there are quite a lot of pros of the shows, but I will also be very harsh with my cons. So if you're into that, let's get right into the video.
中にある赤と青き線それらが結ばれるのは真の像
Okay, so pros. We know what the pros are already. It's a Shinkai movie. The production quality is going to be amazing. The visuals were stunning. Alright, the colors and the animation was so smooth. The CGI did look a little bit out of place sometimes, but altogether it just felt so awesome to watch, right? I was watching this in 4D, so I was just struck the entire time. It was amazing to watch, and the videos that I watched of it didn't do it any justice. If you watch the trailer and the actual movie, you put them side to side, it is completely different, right? It's a huge experience watching in cinemas, and I highly recommend you do it. And the soundtrack, the music, the sounds, they were amazing, right? They weren't too intrusive. They didn't like take the whole scene for themselves, but they absolutely complemented the scene so well. But that's pretty much all of this. It's a Shinkai movie. I expect that of a Shinkai movie. I'm not gonna walk into a Shinkai movie and expect like 7 Deadly Sins quality. I expect this. And that's all this movie had to it. Right, this movie didn't do too well in storytelling. So there are a bunch of issues with the storytelling that I like to talk about. First off, it feels like really irresponsible script writing to just leave a lot of unanswered questions open, right? What do I mean by that? First off, why does the chair have 3 legs? It was never explained. It felt like it was foreshadowed to be some huge connection between her mom and, her death or whatever, but then the movie ends. We don't get an explanation why the chair have 3 legs. This guy, the guy with the beard, what's his point? What is the point of him? We kind of get the foreshadowing that she's gonna end up with him because she's looking for somebody to date and he obviously likes her, but then he just disappears halfway through the movie and she ends up with this 22-year-old. What? Right? And then the cat, right? The cat was foreshadowed to have some greater purpose behind it. Like, why did he give him the guardian powers? Because obviously, we all were led to believe that he has some greater calling, but no, it's just because he's a cat. Right, it's just because he wanted to like meow or whatever. It felt really irresponsible to foreshadow and lead us all to believe something and then just completely just forget to answer them. So it felt like he wrote a bunch of really great points at the start of the movie, but then nearing the end he realized he had to conclude and he just kind of left it at that. Which is the main issue with the conclusion, right? We are led to believe this whole time that she cannot enter the ever after because she's alive and they're dead. But to conclude the movie, apparently she can just walk in there because she's done so as a child before, right? You can't go into any of these gates, but just one because you were there as a child before, and don't ask why you were there as a child before because it opens up a lot of different questions like, were you there as a child? How did you come back? It's such a confusing movie to follow along, especially if you aren't reading, because you can't backtrack and you kind of just fill in the gaps by yourself. And I know that this movie has a huge point behind it, right? It's a 1923 Kanto earthquake and it wants to paint a picture of how you have to move on from previous tragedies or whatever. But just because a movie has a point doesn't mean it can skimp out on bad storytelling, right? It gives like a lot of people this argument that, oh, you didn't like the movie, that means you're missing the point. That means you don't care about tragedies, you don't care about the earthquake. No, I do care. I like this movie. But it does feel like there are a lot of flaws with the storytelling that we're not covering. And with storytelling, you have bad characters, right? These characters feel extremely one-dimensional. When did this turn into a romance? Right, we know it was foreshadowed, right? She called him beautiful at the start. Right, she kept giving him kisses as a chair, but again, he was a chair, right? They were together for a total of 3 days. This girl was with a chair for 3 days. He was an inanimate object for the majority of 3 days, and at the end of those 3 days, she was willing to die for him. What? You gotta understand, right? It feels extremely forced, and we know that Shinkai has to appeal to teenagers because those were the main demographics that watch Your Name or Weathering Review, whatever. But this film definitely did not need a romance, right? It could have just ended as a slice of life, kind of like paint a huge picture, and we ended it at that. So I think that's a big flaw with the show, is that it had a lot of great points, but just completely failed to cover them up. And it just forcibly inserted some points like romance and all these characters having their own escapades, whatever, without any actual purpose. That's the main issue of it. I still really like this show, and it feels kind of stupid to have a lot more cons than its pros, because again, I really did like this movie, but yeah, there were a lot of unanswered questions that I have, and hopefully you guys can help me out with that. So if you comment and actual arguments against my case, I don't want any like, oh, you didn't get the point, that means you don't like the movie or whatever. I want actual arguments against my case, and I will pick the best argument in the comments and I will pin that, and I will go against you. So please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments, and I will see you again next time. Thank you.